I was sitting alone behind a stone pillar at the Grand Oakwood Country Club during my younger brother's wedding reception. I could hear the celebration but couldn't see it. The seating chart deliberately placed me at table 19, tucked behind architectural obstruction, while family sat at tables 1 through 5. I wore my only dress. Not designer like everyone else's. Waiters passed me by. Cousins averted their eyes. My father hadn't looked at me once. Then military dress shoes stopped beside my table, and a deep voice said my rank and last name. I need to explain how I ended up here, hidden away like something shameful at my own brother's wedding. 8 years ago, I was supposed to join the family's commercial real estate empire. My father, Douglas Brennan, had built a $100 million company from nothing. He started with a single strip mall in suburban Connecticut and turned it into one of the most successful commercial property development firms in the Northeast. My mother, Patricia, came from old money. Together, they created what people in their circle called a dynasty. I was the eldest child. The expectation was crystal clear from the time I could understand words. I would graduate from Yale, get my MBA, and take my place in Brennan Properties. My younger brother Aaron would join eventually too, but I was the firstborn. I was supposed to lead. Instead, 3 days after my college graduation, I enlisted in the United States Army. I can still remember my father's face when I told him. We were sitting in his home office, the one with mahogany paneling and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking their 5-acre estate. I had rehearsed what I would say for weeks. I explained that I wanted to serve my country, that I felt called to something bigger than profit margins and property acquisitions. I told him I needed to find my own path. He didn't yell. That would have been easier. Instead, he went completely silent. After what felt like an hour but was probably only 2 minutes, he stood up, walked to his desk, and said, "If you walk out that door in a uniform, don't expect to walk back in as my daughter." My mother cried for weeks. She called me selfish, ungrateful, cruel. How could I do this to them? What would their friends think? What would their business associates say when they asked about me? She made my choice about her embarrassment, her social standing, her discomfort at country club brunches. Aaron, who was 19 at the time, said nothing. He just watched it all happen and then quietly slipped into the role that was supposed to be mine. Within a year, he was working at Brennan Properties. Within 3 years, he was vice president. He became everything they wanted, and I became the daughter they didn't talk about. I rose through the ranks over the next 8 years. I loved the Army. I loved the structure, the purpose, the feeling that what I did actually mattered. I specialized in logistics and operations, the unglamorous backbone that keeps military missions functioning. I was good at it, really good. I made captain at 28, younger than most. I tried to reconcile with my family over the years. I called on holidays. I sent cards. I showed up for Thanksgiving a few times, sitting at the table while conversation flowed around me like I was invisible. They asked Aaron about work, about his life, about his future. They asked me nothing. If I volunteered information about my service, my father would change the subject. If I mentioned a deployment, my mother would get a pained expression and talk about how worried she'd been, making even my accomplishments about her suffering. Eventually, I stopped trying so hard. I built a life that didn't require their approval. I had friends in the service who became my real family. I had mentors who valued my work. I had a career I was proud of. Then 6 months ago, Aaron called. He was engaged to Stephanie Hartley, daughter of Richard and Caroline Hartley, another wealthy family, another perfect match. The wedding would be at the Grand Oakwood Country Club, the most exclusive venue in the state. Over 300 guests. He wanted me there. I was surprised. We hadn't spoken in almost a year, but he sounded genuine on the phone, said it wouldn't be the same without his sister there. I let myself hope. Maybe this would be different. Maybe a wedding, a new beginning for him, could be a new beginning for us too. I should have known better. The invitation arrived 6 weeks before the wedding. Formal, elegant, expensive cardstock. My name was spelled correctly, at least. I requested leave, which wasn't easy given my schedule. I bought a dress I couldn't really afford on a captain's salary, navy blue with simple lines, appropriate, but not flashy. I drove 8 hours from my base in Virginia to Connecticut, checking into a modest hotel because staying at my parents' house wasn't even suggested as an option. I arrived at the Grand Oakwood Country Club that afternoon feeling nervous but hopeful. The venue was stunning. All soaring ceilings and crystal chandeliers and French doors opening onto manicured gardens. The ceremony was beautiful. Aaron looked happy. Stephanie looked perfect in a dress that probably cost more than my car. I sat in the back, but I was there. That meant something. Then came the reception. I found the seating chart in the elegant foyer. A massive display with calligraphy and tiny pearl accents. I scanned the names, looking for mine. Table 1. Parents of the bride and groom. Grandparents. Table 2. Bridal party. Tables 3 through 5. Immediate family and closest friends. I kept scanning. Table 10. College friends. Table 15. Business associates. Table 19. Peggy Brennan. Alone. I found my assigned table and understood immediately. It was positioned behind a massive stone pillar, part of the club's grand architecture. From where I sat, I could hear everything but see almost nothing. It wasn't in the back of the room. It was worse. It was hidden. I sat down in my second-hand dress and looked at the empty chairs around me. 8 seats, all vacant. This wasn't about space constraints or awkward numbers. This was deliberate. They wanted me here just enough to avoid questions about my absence. But they wanted me invisible. That was 90 minutes ago. I've been sitting here eating rubbery chicken and overcooked vegetables, listening to toasts I can't see, hearing laughter I'm not part of. A few cousins walked past, saw me, and quickly looked away. Waiters have forgotten to refill my water glass 3 times. I've perfected the art of looking like I'm fine while feeling like I'm breaking. Then I heard the footsteps. Military dress shoes have a distinctive sound, especially on marble floors. I looked up. Standing before me in full military dress uniform, medals gleaming across his chest, was General Marcus Crawford. I stood up so fast I nearly knocked over my chair. Every military instinct I had kicked in immediately. "General Crawford, sir," I said, my voice catching slightly. He was exactly as I remembered, though maybe a bit more gray at the temples. Tall, imposing, with the kind of presence that commanded respect without effort. His uniform was immaculate. Rows of ribbons and decorations telling the story of a legendary career. He was one of the most decorated officers in the United States Army. A man whose name was spoken with reverence at every level of command. And he had been my commanding officer 3 years ago during a classified operation in Eastern Europe. "Captain Brennan," he said, and the warmth in his voice made my throat tight, at ease. "What are you doing hiding behind this pillar?" I tried to laugh it off, but it came out hollow. "Just enjoying the view, sir. It's very architectural." He didn't smile. His eyes, sharp and assessing, took in the empty table, the hidden location, the way I was dressed, compared to the glittering crowd beyond the pillar. He pulled out a chair and sat down without asking permission, gesturing for me to sit as well. "This is a family event, isn't it?" he asked directly. I saw Brennan on the wedding announcement. "Aaron Brennan is the groom. Any relation?" There was no point in lying. "My brother, sir." His expression hardened. "Your brother. And you're seated here, alone, where no one can see you?" I looked down at my hands. "It's complicated. I've been in the military for 35 years, Captain. I've seen complicated. This looks like something else entirely." He leaned forward. "Your family doesn't appreciate your service, do they?" The bluntness of the question caught me off guard. I felt tears prick at my eyes and blinked them back hard. They never understood why I enlisted. They had plans for me. I was supposed to join the family business, help run their real estate empire. When I chose the army instead, they saw it as abandonment, betrayal, even. And they've never forgiven you. "No, sir." General Crawford was quiet for a moment, his jaw tight. Then he said, "I'm here because the bride's father, Richard Hartley, is an old friend from West Point. We went through the academy together back in the 80s. He left the service after his commitment to pursue business, but we've stayed in touch. He personally invited me as a guest of honor." I felt a strange jolt. Richard Hartley, my soon-to-be brother-in-law's father, was connected to General Crawford. Small world. "Captain," the general said, his tone shifting to something more determined. Does your family know about your commendation? About the operation in Romania? I shook my head. I never told them. They never asked about my service. It seemed pointless to try to explain. The Bronze Star you earned for valor isn't pointless. They wouldn't care, sir. He stood abruptly, his face set in that expression I remembered from mission briefings, when Head made a decision, and nothing would change his mind. Captain Brennan. I'm here without a +1 this evening. My wife couldn't make the trip due to a prior commitment. Would you do me the honor of being my guest for the remainder of this reception? I stared at him. Sir, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't want to cause problems. Problems? He raised an eyebrow. Captain. Your family seated you behind a pillar at your own brother's wedding. I'd say the problems already exist. Now, are you going to follow an order from a superior officer? Or are we going to debate this? Despite everything, I almost smiled. Sir, I'm not technically on duty. Consider it a strong suggestion then. He offered his arm. Follow my lead and pretend you're my date. Let's see how this plays out. I hesitated, but something in his eyes made me trust him. I'd served under General Crawford during one of the most intense periods of my career. Head never steered me wrong. I stood and took his arm, and we walked around the pillar into the main reception area. The effect was immediate and electric. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Heads turned. The string quartet kept playing, but several couples on the dance floor slowed to stare. I felt 300 pairs of eyes land on us, or more specifically, on the general in his decorated uniform with me on his arm in my simple dress. We walked through the room toward the main tables. My father, sitting at the head table between my mother and Aaron, went absolutely pale. His fork clattered against his plate. My mother's hand froze halfway to her mouth, her expression somewhere between shock and horror. Aaron turned to see what everyone was looking at, and his eyes went wide when he saw me. But the most dramatic reaction came from Richard Hartley, the bride's father. He was a distinguished man in his late 50s, silver hair, perfectly styled, wearing a tuxedo that probably cost more than my monthly rent. The moment he spotted General Crawford, he stood so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. He rushed over, hand extended, face lit with genuine pleasure. General Crawford, I'm so glad you could make it. This is an incredible honor. He shook the general's hand enthusiastically, then his gaze shifted to me, standing beside the most decorated officer in the room. Confusion flickered across his face. General, who is your lovely companion? General Crawford's voice carried across the suddenly quiet reception hall. This is Captain Peggy Brennan, one of the finest officers I've ever had the privilege to serve with. Richard Hartley's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: surprise, confusion, and then dawning realization. Brennan? As in Aaron's sister. The very same, General Crawford confirmed, his tone pleasant but with an edge I recognized. I had no idea they were related until just moments ago. Small world, isn't it? Richard looked from me to the general to the head table where my family sat frozen in place. His expression shifted to something uncomfortable. Captain Brennan, it's lovely to meet you. I had no idea Aaron's sister was in the service. There's a lot about Captain Brennan that surprises people, the general said smoothly. Shall we find our seats? The next 20 minutes passed in a surreal blur. General Crawford led me to a table near the front, where several seats remained empty. He pulled out a chair for me with the same courtesy he might show a visiting dignitary. I sat, acutely aware that half the room was still watching, whispering, trying to figure out what was happening. The best man, one of Aaron's college friends named Tyler, stood to give his toast. It was funny and warm, full of inside jokes and memories of their fraternity days. People laughed and clinked glasses. I watched my brother smile and kiss his new wife, and I felt that familiar ache of being so close to my family yet so impossibly far away. Then Richard Hartley stood and took the microphone. Good evening, everyone, he began, his voice smooth and practiced. For those who don't know me, I'm Richard Hartley, father of the beautiful bride. Caroline and I are thrilled to welcome Aaron into our family, and we're grateful to all of you for being here to celebrate this special day. He went through the expected remarks, thanking the wedding planner, complimenting the venue, making a joke about his credit card bill that got polite laughter. Then his tone shifted. We're also honored tonight to have some very special guests. Old friends, family members who traveled great distances, and… He paused, his eyes finding General Crawford, one of my oldest and dearest friends from my time at West Point. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to acknowledge General Marcus Crawford, one of the most decorated officers in the United States Army. The room erupted in applause. People stood, turning toward our table. The general remained seated at first, modest, but the applause continued until he finally stood and gave a gracious nod. The respect in the room was palpable. Even my father, still pale and stiff at the head table, clapped slowly. Richard Hartley's voice boomed over the sound system. General, would you be willing to say a few words? I know everyone would love to hear from you. I felt the general glance at me. Then he squeezed my shoulder gently and said quietly, Come with me. Before I could protest, he took my hand and led me to the front of the room. My heart hammered. Every eye was on us. My mother looked like she might faint. Erin's expression was unreadable. Stephanie, the bride, leaned toward her mother and whispered something urgent. General Crawford took the microphone, still holding my hand. Thank you, Richard. I'm honored to be here. I don't usually speak at weddings, unless I'm officiating one for someone in my command. But tonight is special. He paused, looking out at the crowd with the same commanding presence head used to brief rooms full of officers. I've served in the United States Army for 35 years. In that time, I've met thousands of soldiers, enlisted personnel, junior officers, senior commanders. Most of them blur together after a while. The nature of military service means you're constantly meeting new people, working with different units, moving to new assignments. The room was completely silent, but there are a handful of individuals who leave such an impression that you remember their names, their faces, their character years later. These are the people who don't just do their jobs, they excel, they inspire, they make everyone around them better. He glanced down at me, and I felt my face flush. Captain Peggy Brennan is one of those rare individuals. I heard someone gasp. It might have been my mother. 3 years ago, the general continued, I had the privilege of commanding an operation in Eastern Europe. I can't give you many details due to classification, but I can tell you this. The mission involved coordinating logistics across 3 countries under extremely difficult circumstances. We faced equipment failures, severe weather, communication blackouts, and rapidly changing tactical situations. He gestured toward me. Captain Brennan was my logistics officer. When one of our primary supply routes was destroyed by flooding, she rerouted our entire supply chain in under 4 hours. When enemy forces cut off one of our evacuation points, she coordinated alternate extraction procedures that saved American lives. She worked for 72 hours straight without sleep, running on coffee and sheer determination. People were leaning forward now, genuinely interested. I wanted to disappear, but the general's hand on my shoulder kept me grounded. Her quick thinking, her logistical genius, her absolute refusal to quit under pressure directly contributed to the success of that mission. She received a Bronze Star for her actions, a Bronze Star for valor, one of the highest honors we can bestow. Pride surged through me, mixed with embarrassment and grief. This was the first time anyone in my family had heard this story. He'd earned one of the military's highest decorations, and he'd never told them because I knew they wouldn't care. General Crawford's voice grew harder, more pointed. Captain Brennan was recommended for promotion to major, but she declined, not because she couldn't handle the responsibility, but because she wanted to transition to teaching at the United States Military Academy at West Point. She wanted to train the next generation of officers, to pass on what she'd learned. He paused, letting that sink in. Teaching at West Point was one of the most prestigious positions in the military, reserved for the best and brightest. She's one of the most selfless, brilliant, dedicated people I've ever known, which is why I was surprised, deeply surprised, to find her tonight sitting alone behind a pillar, hidden from view at her own brother's wedding. The silence that followed was deafening. It wasn't the polite quiet of an attentive audience. It was the shocked, uncomfortable silence of people witnessing something they wished they weren't. Every eye in the room turned to the head table. My father's face had gone from pale to bright red. His jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscles jumping. My mother looked like she wanted to crawl under the table and disappear. Aaron sat frozen, his expression stricken, staring at me with something that looked like horror. General Crawford handed the microphone back to Richard Hartley and led me back to our seats. His hand on my elbow was steady, reassuring. As we walked, I could feel the shift in the room. People were no longer avoiding my eyes. They were looking at me with something new. Respect, curiosity, even admiration. We sat down, and the general said quietly, "Well done, Captain. You stood there with dignity." I couldn't speak. My throat was too tight. I just nodded. The reception tried to continue. The DJ played music. A few brave couples returned to the dance floor, but the atmosphere had changed fundamentally. Conversations were hushed and urgent. People kept glancing between me and my family's table. The comfortable celebration had become something tense and uncertain. 15 minutes later, I saw my father stand up from the head table. He straightened his tuxedo jacket, said something to my mother, and began walking toward us. His face was set in that expression I knew too well, the one he wore in business negotiations when he was about to destroy an opponent. He reached our table and addressed me without acknowledging the general. "Peggy." A word. Privately. Before I could respond, General Crawford stood, placing himself slightly between me and my father. "Mr. Brennan, I presume? Anything you need to say to Captain Brennan, you can say in front of me." My father's eyes flashed with anger. "This is a family matter. It doesn't concern you. It concerns me when I see an exemplary officer being treated with disrespect." My father's jaw worked. He was not a man accustomed to being challenged, especially not in public. "You don't understand our family dynamics, General." "I understand perfectly." The general's voice was calm but cold. "You don't appreciate your daughter's service? You're embarrassed by her choice to serve her country." "That's not..." My father started, then stopped. He changed tactics, his voice dropping to something more controlled. "Peggy made her choices. She knew what she was walking away from. We had plans for her, a future in the family business. She had opportunities that most people only dream of, and she threw it all away to play soldier." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Play soldier. Play soldier," the general repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. "Mr. Brennan, your daughter has earned one of the highest military decorations this country can bestow. She's saved American lives. She's earned the respect of commanders at the highest levels of military leadership. And you think she's playing?" My mother had followed my father and now joined us, wringing her hands. "Please, can we not do this here? This is Aaron's wedding. We can discuss this privately, as a family." "There's nothing to discuss," my father said sharply. He turned to me directly. "You've made your point, Peggy, showing up here with a general, making a spectacle. Congratulations, you've embarrassed us in front of everyone we know. Are you happy now?" Something inside me cracked. Years of holding back, of trying to be smaller, of swallowing hurt, all threatened to pour out. But before I could speak, General Crawford stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The authority in his tone made my father step back instinctively. "Mr. Brennan, your daughter has served her country with distinction and honor. She's a credit to the uniform she wears. She's earned respect from people who matter in ways you clearly don't understand. And you seated her behind a pillar like she's something to be ashamed of. The only embarrassment here is how you've treated her." My father's face flushed darker. "You have no right to speak to me that way. Actually, I have every right to defend an officer I've served with. This is my son's wedding, and you're a guest here. I can have you removed." A new voice cut through the tension. "No. You can't." Richard Hartley had approached, his expression troubled but firm. "General Crawford is my personal guest, Douglas. One of my dearest friends. If anyone is going to leave, it won't be him." My father turned, clearly expecting support from his son's new father-in-law. Instead, he found opposition. The power dynamic shifted visibly. My father, used to being the dominant force in any room, suddenly found himself outmaneuvered. "Richard, you can't be serious," my father said. His voice strained. "You're going to side with them over your daughter's wedding." I'm siding with what's right, Richard replied quietly. And what you've done to your daughter is not right, Douglas. It's not right at all. The confrontation had drawn attention from the entire reception. Guests had stopped pretending not to watch. Some had moved closer, creating a loose circle around us. The DJ had lowered the music. Even the waitstaff had paused, trays in hand. My father looked around, realized he was losing this battle publicly, and tried to retreat. This is neither the time nor the place. Peggy, well, discuss this later. No, the word came out of my mouth before I could stop it. We won't discuss this later. We never discuss it. You just dismiss me and move on. He turned back, surprise flickering across his face. I rarely pushed back. I'd learned years ago that fighting with my father was like fighting a hurricane, but I was done being blown away. Before anyone could respond, Aaron appeared, pushing through the small crowd that had formed. His face was flushed, his tie slightly loosened. Stephanie was behind him, her perfect wedding makeup showing signs of tears. Dad, stop, Aaron said, his voice tight. Just stop. Aaron, this isn't your concern right now, my father began. But my brother shook his head. It absolutely is my concern. This is my wedding, and you're making a scene. He looked at me, really looked at me for what felt like the first time in years. Peggy, can we talk, please? Just you and me. I glanced at General Crawford, who nodded. Aaron led me away from the confrontation, toward the French doors that opened onto the club's terrace. The cool evening air hit my face as we stepped outside, away from the eyes and whispers. For a moment, we just stood there in silence. Music and conversation drifted out from the reception. Lights twinkled in the gardens below. It should have been romantic, peaceful. Instead, it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Is it true? Aaron finally asked. What the general said? The Bronze Star, the operation, teaching at West Point? Yes. He ran a hand through his hair, messing up the careful styling. Why didn't you tell us? The question was so absurd I almost laughed. Would you have listened? Would any of you have cared? I would have cared. Would you? Because for the last 8 years, every time I've tried to talk about my life, my work, my service, everyone changes the subject. Dad acts like I don't exist. Mom makes everything about how hard my choices have been for her. And you? I trailed off, emotions rising. And I what? You just went along with it. You took the place in the company that was supposed to be mine, and you never once questioned why I wasn't there. You never asked me about my life. You just accepted their version of events. That I was selfish and irresponsible and ran away. Aaron's face crumpled. You're right. God, Peggy, you're absolutely right. I was 19 when you enlisted. I didn't understand what was happening. I just knew Mom was crying all the time and Dad was furious. And there was this opportunity right in front of me. I took it because it was easy, and I never thought about what it meant for you. I didn't want the company. I said. And I meant it. I never wanted that life. But I wanted my family. I wanted you to be proud of me. To see that what I was doing mattered. I should have. His voice cracked. Peggy, I'm so sorry. I had no idea about any of this. A Bronze Star? Logistics operations in Eastern Europe? Teaching at West Point? That's incredible. That's genuinely incredible. And I didn't know because I never asked. I drove 8 hours to be here, I said quietly. I took leave, bought a dress I couldn't afford, came here hoping that maybe things could be different, and you put me behind a pillar. Aaron's face went white. That was me, not Mom or Dad. Me. He looked sick. Stephanie's parents. They asked about you when we were planning the seating. They'd heard there was a sister, wanted to know where you'd be sitting, and I. He couldn't finish. You what? I told them you were difficult. That there was family tension and it was better to seat you separately, away from the main tables. I was embarrassed, Peggy. Embarrassed by Mom and Dad's attitude toward you. Embarrassed that I didn't have a good explanation for why my sister wasn't involved in the family. So I just pushed you aside. Made you invisible. The honesty was devastating. Part of me had hoped the seating was my parents' doing. Something I could blame on their prejudice. But this was my brother. The person Eid loved and protected growing up. Actively choosing to hide me. I told them to put you at table 19 specifically, Aaron continued, his voice breaking. Behind the pillar, where no one would have to explain who you were or why things were awkward. I did that to you. My own sister, Stephanie, had followed us out onto the terrace. She stood a few feet away, crying quietly. I didn't know, she said. Aaron told me you two weren't close, that there was family drama. I thought it was normal sibling stuff. I had no idea he was hiding you. Aaron turned to her, then back to me. After the general spoke, Richard pulled me aside. He was furious, Peggy. Absolutely furious. He asked me how I could treat my sister that way, especially when she'd served with such distinction. He told me he left West Point after graduation to pursue business, and it's been one of his biggest regrets. I remembered the look on Richard Hartley's face when General Crawford was speaking, the wistfulness, the pain of old choices. Dad left because his father pressured him. Stephanie added softly. His family thought military service wasn't prestigious enough, that it was beneath their social standing. Hess spent 30 years making money but feeling empty. When he heard about you, about what you've accomplished, she trailed off. Aaron moved closer, his eyes red. He told me I was a fool, that you'd chosen honor over comfort, service over wealth, and that what Eid done to you was unforgivable. He said if I couldn't see how incredible you are, I wasn't worthy of marrying his daughter. The words hung in the air. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to forgive him immediately, to close the gap that had grown so wide. But another part, the part that had been sitting alone behind a pillar for 2 hours, couldn't let go that easily. I loved you, I said finally. You were my little brother. When you were 6 and had nightmares, I'd let you sleep in my room. When you were 14 and got cut from the basketball team, I drove you to the park every day to practice. When you got into Yale, I was the proudest person in the world, and you thanked me by making me invisible at your wedding. I know. Tears were streaming down his face now. I know, and I can't take it back. But I'm asking you, begging you, to give me a chance to do better. To be the brother I should have been all along. Before I could respond, Richard Hartley himself stepped out onto the terrace. His expression was serious, purposeful. He walked directly to me and extended his hand. Captain Brennan, I owe you an apology. As the host of this event, I should have ensured every guest was treated with respect. I had no idea what was happening, but that's not an excuse. You served our country with distinction, and you were hidden away like something shameful. That's unacceptable. I shook his hand, surprised by the firmness of his grip and the genuine remorse in his eyes. I left West Point 30 years ago, he continued. My father thought military service wasn't appropriate for our family, that we were meant for higher pursuits. Business, politics, society. He said the words with bitter irony. I convinced myself he was right. I told myself I'd serve my commitment and move on to something more important. He looked out at the gardens, his voice growing distant. But every year since, I've wondered what I gave up. When I see officers like General Crawford, people who've devoted their lives to something bigger than themselves, I feel the weight of my choice. I chose comfort over conviction, and I've regretted it every day. He turned back to me. When I heard the general talk about you tonight, about your service and your sacrifice, I saw what I could have been. And when I realized you were Aaron's sister, that you'd been treated this way by your own family because they were ashamed of exactly the things that make you extraordinary, he shook his head. It broke my heart. Stephanie moved to stand beside her father. Captain Brennan, I judged you without knowing you. I let Aaron's embarrassment become my own. I thought you were some kind of problem to be managed, a source of family drama to be minimized. I was wrong, and am sorry. The apologies were overwhelming. I'd spent years being invisible to my family, and now suddenly I was the center of attention. But not because I'd done something wrong. Because I'd done something right. Your father is inside, arguing with General Crawford, Richard said. He's not taking this well. But I want you to know that regardless of what happens with your parents, you have a place in this family. You're Aaron's sister, which makes you my family too. And anyone who serves this country with the distinction you have will always be welcome in my home." The words cracked something open in my chest. For 8 years, I'd been searching for acceptance from the family I was born into. I never expected to find it in the family I was marrying into. But my father was inside, still fighting. This wasn't over. We returned to the reception together, Aaron, Stephanie, Richard, and me. The atmosphere inside had grown even more tense. General Crawford stood near our table, his posture rigid, clearly in the middle of an argument. My father faced him, my mother hovering anxiously nearby. A crowd of guests watched from a careful distance, pretending to mingle while obviously listening. "You've made your point, General," my father was saying, his voice tight with controlled anger. "You've humiliated us in front of everyone. Are you satisfied?" "I haven't humiliated anyone, Mr. Brennan. I simply told the truth about your daughter's service and accomplishments. If that feels like humiliation to you, perhaps you should examine why." My mother touched my father's arm. "Douglas, please. Let's just let this go. It's Aaron's day." It was Aaron's day until this man decided to turn it into a spectacle. My father snapped. He pointed at me as I approached. "And you, bringing him here, staging this whole performance. What did you think would happen? That we'd suddenly applaud your choices? That everything would be forgiven?" The pain in his voice surprised me. It wasn't just anger. There was something else underneath. Something raw and old. "I didn't bring him," I said quietly. "I was sitting alone behind a pillar, trying to be invisible like you wanted. He found me. He recognized me. Hez, the one who offered me his arm and walked me into view." My father's laugh was bitter. "Of course. The hero officer, rescuing the poor rejected daughter. It makes a great story, doesn't it?" "Dad, stop!" Aaron's voice cut through the tension. He positioned himself next to me, a deliberate choice. "Just stop. You're wrong about this. You've been wrong about Peggy for 8 years. My father turned to Aaron, surprise and anger warring on his face. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about. I know that our sister has served her country with honor. I know she earned a Bronze Star for valor. I know she's going to teach at West Point, one of the most prestigious positions in the military. And I know that we've treated her like garbage because she didn't want to sell real estate. It wasn't about selling real estate." My father exploded. "It was about family. It was about legacy. Everything I built for you and your sister. Everything I worked for was so you'd have opportunities I never had." And she walked away from it like it meant nothing. "It meant something," I said, finding my voice. "It just wasn't what I wanted." "What you wanted?" My father's face was red now. "What about what I wanted? What about the sacrifices I made? I worked 80-hour weeks for 30 years building that company. I missed soccer games and dance recitals and family dinners. I did it all so my children would have security, opportunity, a future. And you threw it back in my face." The truth of it hit me suddenly. This wasn't really about the army or the family business. It was about my father feeling rejected. "I didn't throw anything back in your face," I said carefully. "I made a different choice. I wanted to serve my country. That doesn't diminish what you built or what you sacrificed. It diminishes everything," he said, his voice cracking. "Because it meant my sacrifices weren't enough. I wasn't enough. If I had been, you would have stayed." My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Aaron looked stricken. Even my father seemed shocked by his own admission, as if he'd revealed something he hadn't meant to say. General Crawford spoke into the silence, his voice gentler than before. "Mr. Brennan, with respect, you're conflating your daughter's choices with your worth. They're not the same thing. Peggy didn't leave because you weren't enough. She left because she was called to something else." My father shook his head stubbornly. "You don't understand. I understand better than you think. I have 3 children. One is an army captain, one is a doctor, one teaches kindergarten. None of them followed in my footsteps exactly. And you know what? I'm proud of all of them because they're living lives that matter to them, not just living the life I would have chosen. That's easy to say when they all succeeded in respectable careers," my father muttered. "You think military service isn't respectable?" General Crawford's voice sharpened again. "Your daughter commands soldiers. She makes life and death decisions. She's earned decorations that most people will never achieve. And you think that's less worthy than selling commercial real estate? That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Because from where I'm standing, you have an extraordinary daughter who has done extraordinary things, and you're too proud and too hurt to see it. The argument was drawing more attention. Guests were no longer even pretending not to watch. The string quartet had stopped playing. Even the waitstaff had paused their work. I realized this was my moment. I could let others fight this battle for me, or I could fight it myself. For 8 years, I'd tried to make myself smaller, tried to accommodate my parents' feelings, tried to earn acceptance by minimizing my own achievements. No more. I stepped forward, positioning myself between General Crawford and my father. Dad, stop. Just stop fighting with him and listen to me. My father looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time all evening. I'm done apologizing for my choices, I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. I'm done trying to make myself smaller so you feel better. I chose to serve my country, and am proud of that choice. I've led soldiers. I've saved lives. I've earned the respect of people I admire. If that embarrasses you, that's your problem, not mine. My mother tried to interrupt. Peggy, you're causing a scene. I'm causing a scene. I turned to her. You seated me behind a pillar at my own brother's wedding. You literally hid me from view because you're ashamed of me. How is that not causing a scene? We just wanted to avoid conflict, she said weakly. By pretending I don't exist? By treating me like I'm shameful? I shook my head. I've tried for 8 years to make peace with you. I've called on holidays, I've sent cards, I've shown up when you let me, sitting quietly while you ignore me or talk around me. I've made myself invisible because I thought that's what you wanted. But it's never enough, is it? Because the problem isn't what I do. The problem is who I am. That's not true, my mother protested, but her voice lacked conviction. It is true. I'm not the daughter you wanted. I didn't want designer clothes and country club memberships. I didn't want to marry someone from your social circle and produce grandchildren who'd look good in Christmas cards. I wanted purpose. I wanted to serve something bigger than myself, and you've punished me for that every day since. My father's jaw worked. We've given you every opportunity to come back. The door has always been open if you'd just admit you made a mistake. That's the problem. I was almost shouting now, years of frustration pouring out. You want me to admit I made a mistake. You want me to apologize for choosing a life you don't approve of. But I didn't make a mistake, Dad. I made a choice, and I'm not going to apologize for it anymore. Then what do you want from us? He demanded. I want you to see me, really see me, not the daughter you wish you had, but the daughter I actually am. I want you to be proud of what I've accomplished instead of ashamed of what I didn't do. I want to be part of this family without having to pretend I'm someone I'm not. And if we can't give you that, the question hung in the air, brutal in its honesty. My mother gasped. Aaron looked horrified. But my father's face was set, stubborn, waiting for my answer. I felt something shift inside me. A weight I'd been carrying for 8 years suddenly lifted. Because I finally understood that I didn't need their approval. I'd been seeking it, begging for it, making myself miserable trying to earn it. But I didn't need it. I had earned the respect of General Marcus Crawford, one of the most decorated officers in the United States Army. I had saved American lives. I had earned a Bronze Star. I was going to teach at West Point, training future military leaders. I had built a life of meaning and purpose, and whether my parents could see that or not, didn't change its value. Then it'll be fine, I said quietly. I've built a life without your approval. I have friends who are like family. I have mentors who value my work. I have a career I'm proud of. I would love to have you in my life, but I don't need you in my life, not if the price is hating myself for who I am. My father's face went pale. You don't mean that. I absolutely mean it. I came here today hoping things could be different. I hoped Aaron's wedding might be a chance for us to heal, to start over. But you made your choice when you put me behind that pillar. You made it clear that I'm not really part of this family unless I'm the person you want me to be, so I'm making my choice too. I'm choosing myself. I turned to General Crawford. Thank you, sir, for everything tonight. For seeing me when no one else would. For standing up for me when I couldn't stand up for myself. But I think I'm ready to leave now. He nodded, respect clear in his expression. It would be my honor to escort you out, Captain. I looked at Aaron. Congratulations on your marriage. I mean that. I hope you and Stephanie are very happy. Aaron's face was streaked with tears. Peggy, wait. Please don't go. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know you are. And maybe someday we can rebuild what we had. But not today. Today, I need to leave with my dignity intact. I started to turn, but my father's voice stopped me. Peggy, wait! I paused, not turning around. He struggled with the words. I don't know how to fix this. You start by seeing me as I am, I said softly. Not as who you want me to be. You start by recognizing that my choices are mine to make, and they're valid even if you don't understand them. You start by being my father instead of my judge. I didn't wait for his response. I took General Crawford's arm, and we walked out of the Grand Oakwood Country Club together. Behind us, I heard my mother crying and Aaron calling my name, but I kept walking, my head high, my steps steady. For the first time in 8 years, I felt free. The parking lot was cool and quiet, the noise of the reception muffled behind thick walls and closed doors. General Crawford walked me to my car, a modest sedan that looked painfully out of place among the luxury vehicles filling the lot. That took courage, Captain, he said. More courage than most people ever find. I leaned against my car, suddenly exhausted. I don't feel courageous. I feel like I just burned down every bridge I had left. You didn't burn bridges. You stopped setting yourself on fire to keep other people warm. He smiled slightly, an important distinction. I managed a weak laugh. Did you really plan all this, sir? Walking me out, making that speech? I planned to honor a fellow officer who deserved recognition. The rest. He shrugged. The rest was responding to what I saw. And what I saw was unacceptable. You're one of the best officers I've served with, Peggy. Seeing you hidden behind a pillar, treated like something shameful, made me angry in ways I haven't been angry in years. Thank you, I said, and meant it. For everything. For seeing me, for standing up for me, for reminding me that my service matters. Even if my family doesn't see it. Your service does matter. You matter. Don't ever forget that. He pulled out a business card and handed it to me. This has my personal cell number. If you need anything at all, you call me. Understood. I took the card, holding it like a lifeline. Yes, sir. And Peggy, the offer to co-author that strategic operations textbook is real. I've been looking for someone with your combination of field experience and analytical skills. If you're interested, we can discuss it after you're settled at West Point. I stared at him. You're serious. Completely. I don't make offers I don't intend to keep. He gave me a brief, warm hug, then stepped back. Go home, Captain. Rest. Process what happened tonight. And remember, you didn't lose your family tonight. You found yourself. I watched him walk back toward the club, his uniform crisp and dignified even in the dim parking lot lights. Then I got in my car and sat there for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, breathing. My phone buzzed. Then again. And again. Text messages flooding in. Aaron, Peggy, please don't leave like this. I'm so sorry. Can we talk? Aaron, I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'm asking anyway. You're my sister. I love you. Aaron. Dad is in shock. Mom is crying. Everyone is talking. Richard told Dad he was ashamed to be associated with him. This whole night is falling apart. Aaron, please just tell me you're okay. I texted back. I'm okay. I need some space. We'll talk later. Another number I didn't recognize. This is Stephanie. I know you have no reason to listen to me, but I want you to know your speech was the bravest thing I've ever seen. My father cried. He never cries. You reminded him of something he'd forgotten. Thank you. I didn't know how to respond to that, so I didn't. I drove back to my hotel, still wearing my secondhand navy dress, still feeling the weight and lightness of the evening warring inside me. Eid confronted my family, said things Eid needed to say for years, walked away with my head high. But Eid also possibly severed the last threads connecting me to the people who raised me. In my hotel room, I changed into comfortable clothes and sat on the bed, staring at nothing. My phone kept buzzing. More messages from Aaron. One from my mother, brief and painful. "I don't understand why you hate us so much." I didn't hate them. That was the tragedy of it. I loved them. Desperately. Which was why their rejection hurt so deeply. But love wasn't enough if it required me to be someone I wasn't. 3 days later, I was back at my base in Virginia, throwing myself into work. My commanding officer noticed something was different. Asked if everything was okay. I gave him a brief version of what happened. And he listened with the kind of understanding only another military officer could provide. "Family stuff is complicated," he said, "especially when they don't understand the service. But you did the right thing. You can't live your life trying to be who they want. You'll just end up miserable and resentful." I knew he was right. But knowledge didn't make it easier. Aaron kept texting. He was persistent, it'd give him that. He sent pictures from the rest of the wedding weekend, told me about the honeymoon they were planning, shared little details about his life. He didn't push, didn't demand I respond immediately. He just kept the door open. 2 weeks after the wedding, a package arrived. Inside was a framed photograph. It was from our childhood, me and Aaron when we were maybe 8 and 5. We were in the backyard, me pushing him on a tire swing, both of us laughing. I didn't remember the moment, but the joy in it was undeniable. The note with it was short. "I miss this. I miss us. I know I have to earn back your trust, but I'm willing to do the work if you are. Please don't give up on me. Love, Aaron." I put the picture on my dresser and looked at it every day. A month after the wedding, my mother called. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Peggy." Her voice was thick with emotion. "I've been trying to figure out what to say to you for weeks. Your father and we've been talking. Really talking. For the first time in years." I waited, not trusting myself to speak. "I don't expect you to forgive us," she continued. "I'm not even sure I can forgive myself. But I need you to know something. I've been proud of you every single day, even when I couldn't show it. When you enlisted, I was terrified. I had these visions of losing you, of something terrible happening. That fear turned into anger, and I took it out on you. I convinced myself you'd made a mistake because if you'd made a mistake, you could fix it. You could come home. Mom, let me finish, please. I've been thinking about what you said at the wedding. About wanting us to see you as you really are, not as who we wanted you to be. You were right. We've been so focused on our disappointment that we couldn't see your accomplishments. We couldn't see you." She paused, and I heard her take a shaky breath. General Crawford's speech. Hearing about what you've done, what you've achieved. It broke something open in me. I realized I've wasted 8 years being angry about a choice that was never mine to make, and in the process I lost my daughter. Tears were streaming down my face now. "I'm right here, Mom." "Are you?" "Because I don't know if I have the right to call you anymore. I don't know if I've destroyed this too completely to repair." "I don't know either," I admitted. "But am willing to try if you are. Really try. Not me trying to be who you want, but you trying to accept who I am. I want that. Your father. His struggling more. His pride is hurt. And you know how he is. But he's trying too." We went to a military appreciation event last week, for veterans in the community. There was a display about local service members, and we saw your name, Captain Peggy Brennan, Bronze Star recipient. We stood there reading your bio, and I watched your father cry for the first time in 20 years. I couldn't speak. The image of my father, proud, stubborn Douglas Brennan, crying over a display about my service, broke something in me. We took a program. Mom continued. "It's on his desk at work. He looks at it every day. I don't think he knows what to do with it yet, with the realization that he was wrong. But it's there, the beginning of something. That's all I wanted," I whispered. "Just for you to see me. To be proud of who I became, not disappointed in who I didn't become. I'm proud of you, Peggy. So proud. I should have said it years ago, but I'm saying it now. You're serving your country with honor. You're making a real difference in the world. And you're my daughter. I'm proud of you." The words I'd waited 8 years to hear finally landed. And they healed something I hadn't known was still bleeding. "Can I come visit?" she asked tentatively. "I'd like to see where you work. What your life is really like. I want to understand." "I'd like that," I said. "I'd really like that." We talked for another hour, carefully navigating years of hurt and misunderstanding. It wasn't perfect. There were awkward silences and moments where old patterns tried to reassert themselves. But there was also honesty. Real honesty. For the first time in our relationship, when we finally hung up, I felt lighter than I had in years. 3 months after Aaron's wedding, I reported to West Point to begin my teaching position. The United States Military Academy sat on the bluffs above the Hudson River, gray stone buildings steeped in history and tradition. Walking through those gates in uniform, knowing I was there to shape the next generation of officers, felt like vindication. My first day, I taught a class on strategic logistics. 30 cadets sat in the lecture hall, bright-eyed and eager, hanging on my every word. When I described the operation in Romania, the one General Crawford had spoken about at the wedding, I watched their faces light with understanding. This was real. This was what they were training for. After class, a young female cadet approached me. Her name was Julia, a first-year student from Texas. "Captain Brennan, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How did you know this was the right path? I mean, did your family support your decision to serve?" I thought about how to answer that. A few months ago, I would have deflected or given some sanitized version of the truth. But these cadets deserved honesty. "No," I said simply. "My family was devastated when I enlisted. They had other plans for me, other expectations. It took them years to come to terms with my choice, and honestly, we're still working through it." Her face fell slightly. "Oh, I was hoping." "But here's what I learned," I continued. "You can't live your life trying to meet someone else's expectations, even if those people are the ones you love most. You have to make choices that honor who you really are. And if you do that, if you stand firm in your values and your calling, eventually the right people will see it. And the ones who can't, well, you learn to be okay with that too." She nodded slowly. "That takes courage, it does. But you know what takes more courage? Living a life you don't believe in just to make other people comfortable? That's a prison. And you're the only one who can free yourself from it." Julia thanked me and left. And I stood there in the empty classroom feeling the weight and rightness of my words. That evening, Aaron video called me. He and Stephanie were settled into their new apartment, starting their married life. We'd been talking regularly since the wedding, slowly rebuilding the relationship that should never have fractured in the first place. "Guess what came in the mail today?" he asked, grinning at the camera. "What?" He held up a brochure for West Point's family visiting day. "Stephanie and I want to come see you teach. If that's okay?" "Really? Really?" "And," he hesitated, "Mom and Dad want to come too. If you're willing to have them." My heart did a complicated flip. My mother and I had been talking regularly, but my father was still a work in progress. Head sent one stiff, formal email, acknowledging that Head overreacted at the wedding. It wasn't an apology exactly, but it was movement. "I'm willing," I said. "But Aaron, I need you to understand something. I'm not going to perform for them. This is my life, my work, my world. They can be part of it, but only if they accept it as it is." "I know, and I think they're starting to get that. Dad especially. Richard Hartley has been working on him." "Richard?" Aaron laughed. "Stephanie's father has basically adopted you as the daughter he wishes had been brave enough to become. He talks about you constantly, about your service and your character. It drives Dad crazy, which is probably half the point. But it's also making him think. Richard didn't have to do that. He thinks he did. He told me that watching you stand up to your family at my wedding was one of the most powerful moments Head witnessed. He said you reminded him what real courage looks like. Not the kind you show in battle, but the kind you show in everyday life when you refuse to betray yourself." I felt tears prick at my eyes. "Tell him thank you," Tell him it meant everything. Tell him yourself. He wants to take you to dinner next time you're in Connecticut. The visiting day came 6 weeks later. I was nervous. More nervous than I'd been before any mission briefing. But when I saw my family walking across the parade grounds, something in me settled. My mother hugged me first, holding on tightly. This place is incredible, Peggy. Absolutely incredible. Aaron and Stephanie were right behind her, full of enthusiasm and questions, and then my father, standing slightly apart, his hands in his pockets, his face unreadable. We looked at each other for a long moment. Then he stepped forward and extended his hand. When I took it, he pulled me into a brief, awkward hug. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, so only I could hear. "I'm sorry it took me this long to see what everyone else saw. I'm sorry I let my pride get in the way of being your father. It wasn't everything, but it was enough for now." I gave them a tour of the campus, showed them my classroom, introduced them to a few of my colleagues. General Crawford happened to be visiting that day, and he made a point of greeting my family warmly. My father shook his hand with visible respect, and I watched something shift in his expression. That evening, over dinner in the officers' club, my father asked me to tell them about the Romania operation. It was the first time he'd ever asked about my service. I told the story, and he listened with genuine interest, asking intelligent questions, nodding at the difficult decisions he'd had to make. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I spent 30 years building a company I'm proud of. But what you've done, Peggy, what you've built, it matters in ways my work never will." I couldn't see that before. I was too caught up in my own disappointment to recognize that you weren't running away from anything. You were running toward something. I wasn't running at all, Dad. I was choosing. I know that now. And I'm proud of you. I should have said it years ago, but I'm saying it now. I'm proud of you. The words settled into the spaces that had been empty for so long, filling them with something warm and healing. Later that night, after they'd returned to their hotel and I was back in my quarters, I sat down and wrote in my journal. I wrote about the wedding, about the confrontation, about the long journey from that moment behind the pillar to this moment of reconciliation, and I wrote about what I'd learned. For years, I believed that I needed my family's approval to be complete. I thought their rejection meant something was wrong with me, that my choices were somehow flawed. I tried to make myself smaller, quieter, less present. I tried to earn their love by diminishing myself. But standing up for myself that night at Aaron's wedding changed everything. When I finally said out loud that I was proud of my choices, that I wouldn't apologize for becoming who I was meant to be, I freed myself from a prison I'd been living in for 8 years. The truth is, you cannot shrink yourself to fit into someone else's vision of who you should be. You'll only end up resentful and lost, living a life that feels like wearing someone else's clothes. For too long I tried to earn acceptance by minimizing my achievements and apologizing for my path. But self-respect, real self-respect, comes from standing firm in your values, even when the people you love can't see your worth. Sometimes the people who should celebrate you most are so blinded by their own expectations and disappointments that they can't see you clearly. They see only the ways you've failed to meet their plans, not the ways you've exceeded everyone else's, and when that happens, you have a choice. You can keep trying to earn their approval by being less than you are, or you can stand in your truth with dignity and strength. Standing in your truth gives other people the opportunity to finally see you. Not all of them will take that opportunity. Some people are too invested in their own narrative to change it. But the ones who matter, the ones who really love you, they'll find their way back eventually. And if they don't, if they can't, you'll be whole anyway. Because you'll know your worth, and that's the only approval you truly need. The general who found me behind that pillar didn't save me that night. He gave me the courage to save myself. He reminded me that I had value, that my service mattered, that my choices were worthy of respect. But the real work, the hard work of standing up for myself and refusing to accept less than I deserved, that was all me. And here's what I want anyone who's listening to understand. If you're in a situation where the people who are supposed to love you are making you feel small, where you're constantly apologizing for who you are or what you want, where you're hiding parts of yourself to avoid conflict, you need to know that's not love. Real love doesn't require you to be less than you are. Real love celebrates you, supports you, believes in you. If the people in your life can't do that, you have two choices. You can keep diminishing yourself, or you can stand up and claim your worth. And I'm not going to lie to you. That second choice is terrifying. It means risking rejection, confrontation, loss. It means saying things that can't be unsaid and walking away from relationships that might not survive the truth. But it also means freedom. It means peace. It means looking in the mirror and recognizing the person staring back at you. I sat behind a pillar at my brother's wedding because my family was ashamed of me, but I walked out of that reception with my head high because I was no longer ashamed of myself. And in the end, that was the only thing that really mattered. The journey isn't over. My relationship with my parents is still healing, still learning, still figuring out how to bridge years of misunderstanding. But we're trying. And that's everything. Aaron has become not just my brother but my friend. He visits regularly, calls just to talk, includes me in his life without hesitation or shame. Stephanie sends me pictures of their apartment, their travels, their daily adventures, making space for me and their family. And Richard Hartley has indeed adopted me as an honorary daughter. He calls to ask about my teaching, sends articles about military strategy he thinks I'd find interesting, and tells anyone who'll listen about my daughter-in-law's sister, the brilliant captain who teaches at West Point. General Crawford and I are 3 chapters into our textbook on strategic operations. We meet once a month to write, to argue about theories, to share stories from our experiences. Has become not just a mentor but a friend. My life is full, meaningful, purposeful, and it's mine. Truly, completely mine. That night behind the pillar could have been the end of my story. It could have been the final proof that I didn't belong, that my choices had cost me everything that mattered. Instead, it became the beginning of standing up for myself, of claiming my worth, of refusing to accept less than I deserved. If you're sitting behind your own pillar right now, hiding who you really are to avoid disappointing someone else, I want you to know something. You are worthy exactly as you are. Your choices matter. Your path has value. And anyone who can't see that is missing out on something extraordinary. Stand up. Step into the light. Let them see you. And if they can't appreciate what they see, that says everything about them and nothing about you. You are enough. You have always been enough. The only person who needs to believe that is you. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had to choose between being true to yourself and meeting someone else's expectations? How did you find the courage to stand up for who you really are? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story touched you, if it resonated with your own struggles or gave you hope, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this with someone who needs to hear that they're worthy exactly as they are. Together, we can remind each other that our worth isn't determined by other people's approval. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. And remember, the next time you feel pressure to make yourself smaller, to hide who you are, to apologize for your choices, you have the right to stand tall instead. You have the right to be seen. You have the right to be celebrated exactly as you are. I wish you courage, I wish you peace, and I wish you the strength to know your own worth.